And I believe it looks like we are about ready here to get started. So, without further ado, please welcome Lab Member who's playing Metroid Dread, any percent unrestricted.
Hey everybody. Hope everybody's having a great time watching the event. You might recognize me as the disembodied voice that hosted on day one. But yeah, I'm Lab Member. We're gonna play some Metroid Dread today. I'm honored to have somebody that's gonna help me commentate. We've got an unrestricted expert in the voice call with me right now. If you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hey y'all, I'm Hobbit. I'm a fellow unrestricted runner. I don't know about expert, but I've been around for a little bit, so I'm here to help my dear friend Lab Member out.
No, yeah, I'm hoping we have a good time. I'm as ready as I'll ever be. We're gonna start the timer. Let me see. So click this, and then time starts when I hit continue on this screen here. So if you want to, Hobbit, you want to count me down for this one?
Absolutely. I'll start from 3, and you go on go. Ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right. So any percent unrestricted. So we split our glitch usage on the leaderboards into 3 categories: glitchless, no major glitches, and unrestricted. Essentially, unrestricted means any glitches are fair game, and I'm going to be showcasing a handful of pretty cool things that you can do in this game that the devs probably didn't want you to do. So Samus got a pretty beefed up, I'd say, moveset in comparison to like the predecessors, namely like, you know, Fusion and Super and stuff. This kind of mimics like a lot of Samus Returns. I think Dread adds like a slide on top of Samus Returns moveset, but you've got a pretty nice wall jump. You've got free aim, which was a very recent addition in the 2D Metroid games. So if I press the L button, I can pull out my laser pointer and I can use that to aim anywhere in like the 360 degrees in the plane of the screen. The parry is back. We're going to be doing that a couple times.
And you can't forget the dash parry. That absolutely makes a huge difference in making the movement feel fluid. It really helps you push, how fast you can move, how you can skip ledges, and in general just really makes for a buttery smooth experience along with the slide. So starting out here, you've seen Lab shoot through some walls here. By doing a slide jump, you actually will allow Samus to peek her cannon into terrain. Similarly here, Lab is jumping and pressing free aim right near the ceiling. And by doing that, you can actually shoot missiles through the seam between hard and soft terrain. The difference there being that soft terrain is breakable. So that line typically cannot be crossed by beam. You'd have to shoot straight through the hard terrain, but as you can see there, Lab is able to kind of sneak a missile in there to hit that blob. And then we have who's, in my opinion, one of the most frustrating bosses in the game, Corpius. You just point and shoot. Unfortunately, because of the way his health is separated, and your missile count in rookie mode, which is 30 compared to the 15 in normal, you can actually only miss about 4 shots to not 2-phase, which is basically the fastest way to kill him. And if you do run out, you have to do this phase transition here and finish him off with the rest of your missiles. The one nice thing about doing this is that your missile count is not 0 at the end of the fight.
Yeah, the rookie mode update definitely made things a little interesting. Makes early Cloak a little more, or the early Corpius fight a little more tolerable.
Yeah,
I've done runs on hard mode. Like I do early Cloak when I run min items hard. It's like so bad because it's like I run out of missiles so fast. It's like I have to advance the fight and stuff like that.
Yeah, and you're so fragile and hard as well that like you got to be really careful. And in general, like while 30 missiles does make it generally more consistent going through 3 phases, strangely open, like a harder ceiling, despite having more ammo.
So early cloak allows us to save a bit of really like Artaria in like a intended playthrough of this game is really roundabout. Like the game kind of has you do like this scenic tour of Artaria before picking up Charge Beam, and then you take another scenic route to go get like open a thermal switch for Spider Magnet, and then you go and fight Corpius and pick up the Phantom Cloak. But since we're kind of doing a little sequence breaking with early cloak, the first Emmy that we encounter isn't going to show up for a little bit. Honestly, it's not even like the first Emmy you would normally encounter. We skipped that like way at the beginning. Like,
yeah, interestingly enough, a lot of the Emmys have like specific intro cutscenes, and if you skip them, they just don't spawn. Here we see the water slope skip, or toilet skip referred to by some. Essentially, by doing a coyote jump and cloaking, you give yourself a larger frame window to jump off of that slope, and then bump Samus's head on top of that ceiling and drop onto that ledge, which essentially just saves like 15 seconds of going through the water, draining it, and then coming back into this room. Another big benefit, like Lab mentioned, of not having the Emmy is that you can just kind of, you know, very relaxed, laid back, run through the Emmy zone. You know, it's kind of free reign. Back there, you saw Lab do the water plat skip, where essentially, if you bonk a sloped ceiling out of like a melee or a free aim press, you can respawn a little bit earlier, which allows you to actually climb up the wall, because normally there is no single wall jump per intended mechanics.
yeah, we're gonna see. There's a handful of things that involve jumping off the wall and then doing a dash melee, so that I can there's gonna be another thing coming up where I do something like wicked similar, where I'm gonna dash melee off the wall and try to grab a ledge that I'm normally not supposed to.
Yeah, as like a general rule of thumb, like if you can clear either an edge or a gap without jumping and just dash meleeing, that's usually faster. Since Samus's ground speed is by far her fastest speed, air is not quite as fast, so anything you can do to reduce air time is pretty good. And dash melee's initial acceleration is quite high, so you know, it's a nice little boost over some areas.
But yeah, I picked a Charge Beam a ways back, but I can kind of give a little overview, I guess. Basically, it lets you open those dark orange doors, lets you explore a little more of the area. There's a little bit of funny tech you can do. If you jump while you're holding a full charge, you get what's like a pseudo screw attack, where it will kill some enemies if you jump into them with it active, which I can kind of demonstrate in this next room. You can speed up your charge by either, so you can either spin, so I can do like, I can do that. I don't know, it wasn't really good demonstration. You can also do like a double turnaround, and you charge your beam a little faster. I'll be using mid-air spins to perform quick charges on some of the mini bosses later on. I'll try to make a point of it, or try to remember to point it out when I actually do it.
Yeah, if not, I've got you covered.
Yeah.
You know, quick charging and quickly firing a missile known as a charge missile is something we'll see later, like Lab mentioned. It's just, until you have some of the whoa, that slide looked crazy. Until you have some of the higher damaging beams, you really don't really get to use just pea shooter shots. But here we're seeing the Magus skip. So it's that same property as water plat skip, where hitting that angled ceiling allows you to get up a little bit higher, and this allows us to spawn the Emmy, because if we are to not break that blob and not spawn the Emmy, if you go to the white CU, you actually get soft locked because the Emmy is not there. It cannot get to you because of that blob, and it causes the game to lag really, really badly. Generally speaking, I mean, there are some lag in areas like Dyron that are quite large, but most of the game's really, really bad lag is from the Emmy trying to find you, and in most vanilla cases, that's not even a factor.
Oh, I got greedy.
So this Emmy kill is actually kind of almost the hardest one that's in the run, despite being the first one. You have a very, very small window of ground to work on. Nice parry, though. That's really, really good. So now Lab can just kind of set up and do it on the other side of the platform. Now a lot more chill because you can be shooting before the Emmy even appears. But with good movement and an immediate plant shot, you can break that Emmy's face mask before it gets to you, and then either slide under or jump over and quickly kill it. That's known as the plant kill. And that's just like the general terminology for any kill where you don't really move during the Emmy fights. Generally speaking, you might notice that happens a lot. It's just tighter for some of them.
Yeah, well, I did want to add, although I got that parry due to dumb luck, a lot of high-level runners have been actually practicing their white Emmy parries. There's actually a science behind, like, essentially you can narrow down the sequence of parries that the white attacks that the white Emmy goes down to, like, roughly 2 or 3 sequences, and once you can kind of work it down to those 2 or 3 sequences, you can kind of work out like the proper timing to almost guarantee a parry on the white Emmy. This is required for a relatively new skip that got discovered. I think a majority of community members call it the big Artaria skip. It skips even more of Artaria than what I did here. And with that, you need to do like a really difficult wall jump to like bait the Emmy to knock you into a part of the Emmy zone that you normally wouldn't be able to in early game. And then you have to get a perfect parry so you don't get soft blocks.
That was a casually great elevator deboost. I just want to point that out.
I was just running my mouth and doing that whole thing. Yeah, so elevator deboost basically prevents by doing that damage boost, I don't have to ride the spider magnet that kind of runs along the ceiling. That thing's really slow.
It's not fun, and it feels really bad when you mess it up and you have to go for it. But to put it in a context, that big Artaria skip Lab was talking about essentially skips that whole... You go from that initial tutorial section where the white Emmy is straight to that big room that he did water plat skip in, so you save all of that navigation around and basically go directly to Charge Beam, which does also have some implications for later on in the run, because essentially it breaks the Atom sequence, which is a convenient segue because Lab Member is actually approaching the last Atom station for the run. So Atom, he loves to yap, he loves to talk, and he's got a lot to say. And unfortunately, that costs a lot of time and makes us press the A button a lot. So you'll be seeing in Cataris, which is normally known as pretty much just like a true movement gauntlet, get turned on its head for Unrestricted using a trick that Lab will be attempting shortly. But by doing that routing, you can actually skip an Atom conversation, and it's essentially like a train at a station where if you talk to Atom, the train goes to the next station, and if you just skip that station, then he will never leave there. So that puts you in a position where the next time you go to an Atom room that's not the next one, you just get to do it for free. Very nice super boost there. Lab manipulating the plies to get up to the top and skip, waiting for the magnet to come down. And the world's worst ply, unfortunately, loves to waste everyone's time.
Taking a brief run through the spicy room.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like a well-known kind of strat. It barely saves any time. It's very risky, but it's a good test of whether you really know your movement, if you're confident enough to run through the room without... Some runners, I think opts to do it without picking up the extra E-tank that I did at the beginning of the run. Like, you can theoretically do that on 100 health, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, especially in Unrestricted, where you really don't fight that many bosses. Like, you skip most of the major ones. And it's really just kind of the powerbomb soldier at the end of the game where you have to be careful. But you can absolutely beat the game with tankless. That's very common at top level. And something to note, there's actually an alternative route in Cataris as well. So Lab is doing kind of that movement gauntlet version of Cataris here. But he will be taking one unrestricted detour very, very soon. You can also shoot that blob that's right in the Emmy zone, right in that first encounter with the green Emmy, by doing the same seam pseudo that you did to get early cloak. It's just quite a bit more precise and can be a little frustrating. There's also the option to do an Emmy warp in that room, which is very hard and not worth the risk compared to the seam pseudo. But we'll be talking about Emmy warp again very, very soon. For now, Lab is going to the one of the basic keys of Dread speedrunning, the ascending dual magnet skip, also shortened colloquially to atom skip. This is that movement that I was referring to earlier that allows us to skip the atom sequence. So you essentially have to do a few buffered wall jumps and then melee and respin wall jump off of the bottom of this sloped wall. And that allows you to get up top. That was very, very nice, by the way, Lab. I want to make sure.
No, yeah,
that's clear. That was a very hard trick.
Didn't want to interrupt your amazing explanation of game mechanics, but yeah, second try ADM is nothing to sneeze at for sure. Not to toot my own horn.
And then, unfortunately, we have to. The Emmy wastes our time because it almost always spawns in our way. And now Lab is going to be attempting what is called the Emmy warp. Essentially, there's a property in this game where, if you tag the Emmy doors on the inside of the Emmy zone, the next time you go through a load zone, the Emmy will actually warp to one of its starting positions. You can take advantage of this by running into the door with the Emmy, and it will essentially take you with it. However, the unfortunate consequence of that is that now you have to parry the Emmy. Now, normally, as Lab was hinting at before, you would have to understand kind of the Emmy patterns for its first and second counter. But because this trick actually breaks the camera, you can pause during the cutscene for getting caught by the Emmy, which allows you to essentially pause buffer the warp. You may have noticed LabMember also tagged the door on the outside. By doing that and running into the Atom Room and out, it guarantees that spawn where the Emmy's in that tunnel, which gives you a lot of time to get back down and manipulate the Emmy into this non-alert setup, which is a very simple. Oh, unfortunately, not tagging the door on the inside of the Emmy zone. It's really easy to get a false positive there.
I got it or not. Let me see if I'm going to try and listen for it.
Yeah, it makes a very subtle noise, so it's really easy to miss it. Because on the outside of the Emmy zone, the door closes, so you get an immediate feedback. But on the inside, you just have to know the noise. It basically makes the same noise as the door, as if you had walked through the door. But yeah, another fun thing about this is that you get to use Phantom Cloak for its vanilla intended purpose. And in an unrestricted speedrun, I consider that a huge achievement because normally you really only use Cloak for platforming outside of Emmy Warp. So yeah, I think it's kind of fun to get to use it for its intended purpose.
I don't know if you mentioned yet, but so we like to call this, well, I like to call this, we're spinning the wheel. Like Hobbit had mentioned, the Emmy, if you do the setup correctly, it will teleport you to one of 3 locations, but those locations are chosen entirely pretty much at random, or it might as well be. Essentially, I have a 1 in 3 chance of getting the right place, and every time I get it wrong, I have to try again and get the same 1 in 3 chance. My odds don't improve every time I get the wrong location, as much as I would like that to be true.
Yep, and luckily the camera angles that you get for each warp are pretty distinct, and you can see the Emmy and Samus above, because it basically just goes over to that screen to the right of this room. You can actually see Emmy and the Emmy and Samus's feet at the top of the screen when you get the correct warp, because the camera will basically be centered on that door. So, you know, like Lab said, you kind of just spin the wheel, you know. It's unfortunately random, but the setup is pretty simple to replicate, and the positioning is very, very simple to get. It's deterministic movement, so you basically just go for it again and again and again. Unfortunately, Lab getting the lower spawn. Fun fact, if you do parry the Emmy here, it forces you into an airwalk situation, where essentially you can run on the air down that shaft. It has no use, but it looks really funny. There's also another spawn where that missile tank is. And if you get that spawn and you parry the Emmy, you can actually push the Emmy out of the Emmy zone. And if that happens, the game will crash. So, you know, if you see that spawn, people won't even bother trying to parry the Emmy. You just, you know, try to get it to kill you, so that way you can move on to the next attempt.
But yeah, this is an extremely lenient setup. Like, I'm not like there's like a visual cue that I also I don't know how I can explain like a little bit in detail like exactly. I'm doing like the exact same thing every time after like once I see the Emmy leave the room, but the visual cue of like when to start walking forward is extremely lenient. Like, I definitely don't do the exact same like I don't start at like the exact same time every time, but which
yeah,
surprised
essentially,
me. I was like, wow, really?
Essentially, what the positioning does is it puts the Emmy inside the door. So that way, once its vision cone turns red, you just hold forward and you'll walk right into it and warp. It is, you know, a little frustrating at times because, you know, it's random. But the plus side is it's very, very fast. So if you do this, you get a lot of tries before it washes out. It's about 5 or 6 before it washes out if you're doing it quickly. So that is one plus side here. So Lab's currently gotten 2 bottom spawns, one warp where he was not had not tagged the door, and then
I think yes, this is I'm on 5th try.
And then the one to the left.
I have a stopwatch open, so I do have a contingency plan for like if this doesn't end up working out. It's gonna be a little sad because it's like I'm gonna be doing like almost like intended gameplay, but again, like, this is totally random, and I made the estimate like wicked generous on the off chance that I just get really unlucky.
Yeah, you've gotten each of the other spawns twice, so I'm feeling good about this one. You know, the Emmy has been a little rude, you know, I won't lie, but now's your time. And, you know, because you can guarantee that first spawn, you basically just continue rolling the slots until it hits the right one that you want. You do have to be a little careful because the Emmy can hear you before it leaves the room,
yeah, which
alerts it and completely ruins the setup, so you have to do it again. However, you know, as long as you're patient, it's usually pretty simple. And as long as you don't shoot while you're in Phantom Cloak. I don't know anyone that's done that before.
While we're doing this attempt here, can I read a few things about our event?
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
I'm just gonna be doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. I can't wait to... Yeah, this is very cool. This is very cool tech. For anyone who's tuning in, I just want to let you know you're watching No Holidays Allowed 2024, presented by No Glitches Allowed. This event's open to all kinds of speedruns and showcases that runners have to offer, not just glitchless runs, as you see here. And yeah, we're super looking forward to showing off some really amazing speedruns to watch as you bundle up by the campfire this winter. And if you want to help out Go Rescue Pet Adoption Center, check out the pinned message in the Twitch chat.
All
right, Lab, I'm feeling this one. I'm feeling this one.
I'm down to give it one more shot.
Okay.
I'm down to give it one more go, as they say.
I'm a believer personally. This is, you know, you're at the whim of the trick, unfortunately, but, you know, I sometimes I feel like the game rewards a little bit of persistence, you know? I've done that. I've done that many, many times. Yep, it happens. But essentially, the room that you're intended to end up here is right in that green Emmy arena. So by getting that warp, which is actually the position that the Emmy spawns in when you do this manipulation, which unfortunately only affects the starting spawn and not the final spawn, that's the room you want to go to. Because normally it's gated by wide beam, so you have to go all the way through Cataris, go to Dyron, pick up wide beam, and then come all the way back, do another load, and then finally fight the green Emmy. But by doing this, you just get to take a shortcut there. But unfortunately, the Emmy warp gods have been a little rude.
Yeah, the RNG lords unfortunately have not smiled upon this run. That's alright, I get to kind of show off some new stuff, although I might be a little rusty here. The last time I did this kind of movement was when I ran Hundo back in like October. So.
Yeah, luckily it's all like pretty routine movement, so it's nothing too bad. So because Lab did that atom skip, that allows you to go straight to this thermal button, as opposed to going all the way around past the atom room, and through that room where the green Emmy spawns where you do Emmy warp. Nice slide under. So Lab is essentially going to be doing good old classic Cataris, and then does this mean you'll also be skipping Kraid?
Yeah, why
Since
not?
now you technically don't need them.
I'd have to remember to do this, how to do the pseudo diffusion shot in Perennia. Oops. Get out of here.
Yeah, unfortunately the enemies are just kind of in the way, and speaking of enemies in the way...
Yeah, I goofed on that one.
Fortunately, labmemb3r is built different, and the Emmy is...
If there's one thing is, like, the Emmy is really making me look good at parrying today.
Yeah, it's a very narrow window, but some kind of, like, theory around the Emmy parries is that there's 3 possible timings, and each of those timings kind of follows, like, a melody, almost. While it is random, you know, you can kind of, through enough, just kind of being familiar with the Emmy, can kind of get used to and know, like, learn to kind of predict when the parries are going to happen. For example, if the Emmy picks its earliest timing for the first grab, it will generally pick a longer one for the subsequent one. Now, unfortunately, because there's a middle and a long time, that's not guaranteed, but if it does go long, that is technically reactable, even if it's still quite a small window. But as I mentioned before, now Lab is done with Cataris, going to Dyron, gonna go run a quick errand, grab some wide beam, and then move ahead.
One sort of interesting thing routing-wise is you might have noticed I picked up a second E-tank on my way through Cataris. That's normally a portion of the level that you would never see, which is... It's not terrible, because, like, there's enough health packets that, like, you can route in an extra one. Like, I would have... I'm basically dropping a health packet that I would normally have picked up later on. I run with... I'm still a 3-tank gamer, but you can realistically do like 2 if you're feeling spicy. I guess you could do 1. I don't know. People do 1.
I have done 1 before in all bosses, and it's painful. 2 definitely much comfier, just by the way that the game's damage ends up shaking out once you give area. However, 3 is usually a very, very comfortable spot in Dread speedrunning, because most stuff will not kill you in like 1 or 2 hits if you have 3 tanks, with Gold Soldier being the only exception, because that man does lots of damage. But wow, that is a chunky Dyron load. Oh my gosh.
I've never seen the game take that long to load, and I run on physical, so it's like, what's going on?
Something's afoot. Yeah, so that's actually kind of a convenient point. If you play the game physical, the loads are actually significantly longer compared to the digital version stored on an SD card or stored on system memory. So, you know, if you want to complete the game just a little faster, get the digital edition. It will make all those loads just a little bit faster and, you know, help you get from area to area a little bit better.
Yeah, we're gonna do some movement at Dyren. We're gonna spend a little more time with the yellow Emmy than originally intended, but
Mm-hmm.
well, I can still
So as I mentioned before, the Emmys spawn usually based on some kind of cutscene. Let's go Dyren deboost. I love that one. That's really cool. It's one of my favorite rooms in the game, honestly. It's a really cool piece of movement. But if you are able to skip this cutscene in this intro where you fight the yellow Emmy, you can basically not have him spawn until you come back from Berenia and actually need to fight the Emmy. Because the spawn trigger for that is independent of the entrance spawns in Dyren. But unfortunately, you know, because we do not have Morph Ball quite yet, we do need to go take a quick trip back to go get it. And then from there, we'll be going to go pick up some new pajamas for Samus because, you know, it's a little hot out there actually, if you really think about it.
I'm checking the weather forecast. We're expecting the temperatures in Cataris to go up a little bit. But yeah, I guess
it's unfortunate.
Because I started I started from a file that skips the opening cutscene, and I guess dropping a little bit of lore is like, I think, you know, like Samus starts the game with the Varia suit on, and you know, much like almost every Metroid game, loses her abilities, but this time around she also happens to get a brand new dread suit, which is a little strange.
Yeah, I absolutely adore all three dread suit designs. The just base designs of the suits are so cool, and just like so different from the other designs that exist. So here we are back in the Emmy arena for the green Emmy. Lab is going to be doing some charge missiles on this central unit because unfortunately this metal shell is not damaged by individual shots. Despite just getting a beam upgrade, we still cannot quite fight robots like that. But because the brain does take individual pellet shots, you just kind of mash your way through. The community also does allow for a turbo function for controllers. There are specific rules around it, but just to, you know, reduce the risk of repetitive strain injuries, that is an allowed option.
No, yeah, this is I was trying to figure out a good place to bring that up. I was going to bring it up towards the end of the game where I literally only am going to be using beam weapons on bosses due to the fact that I'm skipping so much of the game. But yeah, no, I do want to like praise the lead community members that, you know, advocated for the use of turbo controllers. Due to sort of an unfortunate design oversight, there actually is no cap on, not to use, you know, modern lingo, no pun intended, there's no cap on the frequency at which you can fire your beam in this game, unfortunately. Which essentially, you know, people like me, I'm getting kind of old. I may not look it, but, you know, I came into this community with a little bit of RSI I picked up from speedrunning Mario Sunshine. So it's really nice to be able to, you know, be able to use a controller to that helps me out, and I can focus a little more on the platforming. The platforming is really what I enjoy about this game.
Yeah, I think the platforming just being so fluid and the movement being such a critical piece of the run, it really makes that beam mashing feel just like a, why is it here? You know? As satisfying as it can be to just absolutely mash your heart out against robots and soldiers and Ravenbeak and the like.
I think it is
you
worth
know?
like commending. You know, there are people, community members, that have opted to continue manually mashing, and the sort of the accomplishments they've been able to make. Like I think with manual mashing they can beat the final boss in like 50 seconds. Does that sound right? Am I pulling that number out of thin air?
Yes, no, yeah, that's correct. Fortunately, the boss rush mode for this game is very accurate for Ravenbeak, and with I believe it's called braking.
Yeah.
Where you essentially you turn your shot button into the R button. You can get some really wild turbo speeds or like mashing speeds from that without as much strain as say single or double mashing. It also puts you in a position to missile weave efficiently, which is essentially just shooting missiles and tapping the missile button intermittently while you're shooting to increase DPS. So you see Lab making use of some quick charges over here, and now, unfortunately, we need to break the top part of Artaria. So press the button and start running. And fortunately, the timer for this is actually quite generous. So it's honestly a pretty relaxed section with good movement.
I do think we should give props to the min items runners that like have very small room for error. Like that fire damage that you take in that room can be a run under depending on what difficulty you're playing.
Yeah, both min items and even dread mode. So in dread mode, that's essentially the one-hit mode for this game. And all damage except for environmental damage from heat rooms, cold rooms, and lava will kill you in one hit. And that includes those fire spouts, which can be quite frustrating when you're just playing dread mode casually or like for fun. And yet we have runners like the one and only Charlotte Arania who have beaten dread mode completely hitless, deathless, which is truly an absurd accomplishment. Like, I can only speak to how hard it is because there is just, as smooth as the movement is in this game, there's a lot of incidental damage you take that you don't even think about when you have 299, 399 energy to contend with.
So I'm gonna try to tap into some old muscle memory that I had archived from an older route that I did of Unrestricted. So like Hobbit hinted at earlier, I think we're gonna try and skip Kraid this time around. Due to the fact that I took the time to go and get wide beam, it probably is technically faster to skip Kraid. So normally on the Emmy Warp route, you would go get Morph Ball, and you would you go get Morph Ball, and then you go get Varia Suit, and then you go do Kraid, and then you would go through the purple teleporter, which you're not going to see, I guess. But that would let you that would take you to Dyron, and that actually takes you into one of the dark rooms that I went through for wide beam, and so you can kind of make a little pit stop and grab wide beam on the way to grapple, which is what I'm on my way toward getting next.
Yeah, it essentially just Emmy Warp puts you on a straight line from point A to point B, and by doing all of the things in Cataris first, you, like Lab said, it takes you to that purple TP in the dark room. You can just turn the lights on, grab wide beam, and then leave through the door you came in and proceed into the hot room because you already have Area Suit. Unfortunately, that hot room that's in Dyron here, that's beyond the wide beam door in the dark room, is pretty much the only reason you need the Varia Suit. And there is actually two rule sets for Unrestricted. So there's single file runs, which is what Lab Member's doing here, where you start on a 344, skip the intro cutscene file, and you beat the game without leaving your file. And then there's another rule set called multi-file, which will allow you to make use of a global game state that Lab Member will be able to access once he gains the proverbial trinity or triforce of clipping, those items being grapple beam, speed booster, and flash shift. However, I will wait until he has those three items to explain that, because once he has those three items, that's kind of when the run really steps on the gas and starts getting a little wacky, to say the least.
I think I'll take an opportunity to talk a little bit about early grapple. This is probably a good place to do so. This game For those of you who are familiar with it, probably know that there were a handful of developer-intended sequence breaks. This being one of them, and like the main one that tends to get featured in a lot of speedruns. Oh my goodness! There we go.
You're really enjoying the soup today.
Yeah, I had to. I didn't have my dinner before I started the run, so I had to take a little drink of the sauce.
Yeah, you don't speedrun hungry,
yeah.
you know.
This game has a lot of like developer intended sequence breaks. So like you can get grapple really early here. Normally you'd go and get bombs. You can get bombs before a crate actually, which is kind of what I'm doing here, but in a bit more of a developer intended way. You can get screw attack early. You can get super missiles early. You can get cross bomb early. Am I missing any?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Space jump. Space jump's I think the only other one.
There's a developer intended space jump early, and I think I learned that before I learned the not developer intended space jump early.
Yeah, I mean that was that's like a fundamental like early NMG trick that a lot of people learn because it's kind of one of the first cruxes of a speedrun that you learn in Dread.
But yeah, early grapple isn't like a very like in terms of like routing, it's not as like black and white as it is like, oh look, I can get grapple early, might as well do it. Like it does save time, like I will give you that. There's some grapple blocks on the way through bombs and flash that you normally wouldn't be able to pull, but the problem is you're going through 2 loading zones to get it, and unfortunately this game's loading screens are a little on the long end. So the current like world record route, and I think a lot of high level routes opt to not get grapple early because they would come back here later and get screw attack early, and so they would get grapple during that. But since this is our last visit to Artaria, I'm going to swing by, get grapple, and I'm going to leave.
Yeah, the route that Lab is doing here is really interesting because it actually brings early, like he said, brings early grapple back into Unrestricted, even going all the way back to older routes with like Camlock and things like that. They always wait delay grapple because this double load is just absolutely brutal. Unfortunately, when you finish the ME fight in Dyrant, you are very close to the transports back to Artaria to go grab screw attack. So, you know, it just makes way more sense to grab grapple at that time versus doing this double load here. And, you know, it's doubly so, you know, costly on physical where your loads are a little bit longer. And then it does allow you to go into that top tunnel, but you can actually just grab that ledge or do a morph coyote where essentially you unmorph during coyote time and get a little jump. And that will allow you to actually like just clear the lava gap and not fall in. Even if you do fall in, it's not really particularly costly. Looking like the yellow ME is also being extremely nice to you, which is fantastic. Lab, you have grapple. You could have gone the other way.
Oh shoot, yeah, you're right.
Silly Lab.
Yeah,
see, he's so unrestricted pilled. He's not used to it.
No, that's the thing is like it's not even like unrestricted. Like every route I do now, I think just doesn't do early grapple. Like even Hundo does. I've been trying to learn short boost route for Hundo.
Yeah, that makes sense. And short boost, another route that delays grapple because you have to do stuff and you're trying to get screw attack early, essentially. There actually is a shortcut to skip this part of the dark room. There's 2 versions of the shortcut. You can either do a seam pseudo through that wall to hit that blob that Lab just broke, or if you have diffusion, you can also break the blob that's at the top of the second part of the dark room. That's significantly slower than doing the missile pseudo. The missile pseudo is a backdoor directly into the generator. But it's pretty tricky, honestly. The angle for it is not particularly nice. But it is very, very fast if you can get that missile pseudo. A very interesting fold of pseudoing with missiles is that they do not, you cannot shoot them through the wall unless you're aiming slightly up. Unlike beams where you can do a double turnaround and shoot directly left or right or down even. For missiles, you have to be shooting at an angle as opposed to straight on. But you kind of see like grapple blocks sprinkled throughout the areas that Lab is traversing. This is essentially supposed to be like the reward for doing early grapple, like that one you just saw Lab do, where he got the missile tank, and it just allows you to skip a couple things and just kind of say, like, hey, you got grapple beam, congratulations, you figured it out, you know. Lab's also approaching the proverbial Metroid Dread golf course here. There's a lot of situations, or there are situations where you want to try to morph into a tunnel. This is referred to as a hole-in-one, and harkening back to AGDQ 2023. If you are able to get the hole-in-one, you know, you're a true golfer. And unfortunately for Unrestricted, you only pass through that room once, so you don't really get any other attempts at that hole. So, Lab, just a regular golfer today, but that's okay. That is a very, very tricky hole-in-one.
So we're making our way over to Berenia, the water level. This is basically where all the early grapple time save really kind of kicks in. We've gone into water a couple times. We've gone into sauce, albeit unintentionally. Entering any liquid in this game basically hinders your movement. The optimal way to move through water is to repeatedly jump through it. So I can pull this grapple block here, but I'd have to do a lot of jumping and platforming to get through there if I didn't have grapple, which is what some people like to call one of the hardest rooms in the game if you're focusing entirely on movement.
Yeah, it's a very, very... It's kind of an art to have good water movement, because something that's really interesting about water is if you morph while you're crossing over a ledge, you actually get a little forward boost, which is faster than jumping. So you kind of can, like, you know, scoot yourself a little bit forward compared to just jumping. Jumping in Morphball is even faster than jumping while unmorphed, which it's not a whole lot of difference. Like, you probably wouldn't be able to tell just by looking, but it is slightly faster. Additionally, because Lab has grapple, he will be able to break that grapple block in the water below if he does not wish to do backdoor flash. It is possible to do an infinite bomb jump on that shutter door to kind of hover above it and trick it into thinking you're not there, which is known, like I mentioned, as backdoor flash. Essentially, if you can drop bombs at about 150 BPM, then you can kind of float above the door and kind of go forward and back to get it to open up and allow you to go straight to flash shift. Flash shift, one of the coolest items in the game, one of my favorite new upgrades for Metroid. It's essentially just an air dash, but air dashes are awesome and sick, so I'm here for it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I opted to go for BDF skip. I had forgot to renew my Spotify subscription, so my BDF playlist wasn't readily available.
Yeah, unfortunately, I will not be singing Mr. Brightside on stream. So one
diffusion is doing this.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. One unfortunate consequence of not having diffusion is that this room is a lot slower. If you do have diffusion, you can actually pseudo wave beam both of these blobs from up above, which allows you to just do the water bomb jump, like break them and then do the water bomb jump here. So essentially, there's a state that tells that the game will be like, okay, yeah, the bomb will launch you in the water, but this because Samus standing and Samus in ball are two separate entities. If you unmorph while you're like floating in the water, then Samus will actually retain that information or that global state, and the next bomb that you hit will boost you further. Lab also hitting a very, very clean pseudo on that blob. There are a couple ways to hit that pseudo. You can do a flash slide turnaround and shoot up and to the left. You can do that morph pseudo that Lab did there, where essentially by sticking your foot a little bit into the wall and then morphing to shoot your charge shot, it actually shoots the charge shot from Samus's foot, which puts it a little into the wall and allows you to actually hit that blob. Normally with diffusion, you'd just be able to pop it, but without diffusion, you have to make do. There's also a really wacky setup where if you only have the P shooter, you can do a morph melee on that ledge and then do a seam pseudo. Truly one of the wackiest pseudos in terms of options in the game.
Yeah, I feel like there aren't really a lot of opportunities to show off that pseudo anymore, I guess, now that Unrestricted is kind of veered off in a another direction.
Yeah, it used to be very commonplace to skip Kraid in Unrestricted. You know, it's usually pretty niche that you end up skipping him, namely if you don't do Emmy Warp, but Emmy Warp's been around long enough that most people just kind of do it by routine. So, you know, obviously in run, you know, you want to try to get it for, you want to hope for a first try, but in marathon, you know, you take what you get. But Lab going to be doing some more Charlies here on the central unit and then mashing away the brain. And this is another Emmy fight. Despite the Emmy itself being pretty scary, another Emmy fight that's a little bit of a joke. It's very, very easy. So if you've struggled with this Emmy fight at home, take notes. Lab's going to show you how to do it the fast way. And honestly, the easiest way. Interestingly enough, with modded versions of the game, you can actually tune the Emmy's parameters, and you can make this guy run really, really fast. Which is very, very funny, because he kind of scuttles around like a crab.
It's honestly a very scary Emmy, like, even at normal pace.
Oh my gosh, yes, it's terrifying. Like, that man runs at you, and that's horrifying. Like, no shade to the blue Emmy, because the blue Emmy, I won't lie, blue Emmy's got hands. That Emmy messes me up a lot. But Speed Emmy, I think, really captures that like sense of dread, because it is coming to get you. So you may have remembered earlier where I talked about the Triforce of clipping. You may have noticed that Lab actually has all 3 items now. So we are going to be seeing him make use of one of my favorite tricks in the game, the Bamuhe skew, or colloquially, the skew state. This is a game state where Samus's parameter for her direction is unlocked. Normally, she is locked to facing left and right. And by doing this setup here, where you do a flash slide into the wall, you click free aim to free up your movement, and then you just get into the air. You can either clip through a surface to get into the air, or you can dash melee off a ledge. That's a very common way to do it. During this sequence, you are actually like revving up a Shine Spark, and if you do what Lab did and you aim up and back, and then pause, let go, free aim, and hold forward, you actually get this skew state where, like I said, where your rotation variable is completely unlocked. This allows you to get certain angles that allow you to slowly go into terrain and clip through. And Lab absolutely nailing that up clip through into basically what is intended to be the exit to QR. By doing that grapple up onto the magnet while you're skewed, you give yourself what's called tilt, which is a small angle modulation. And by doing that modulation, you can actually just go straight into the wall. And by doing a buffered Shine Spark with 3 what's called map lags, where essentially you go to the global map, open another area, and then close out of the map, which causes the game to skip a few frames, you can actually extend the initial jump that Samus's Shine Spark does, which lets you skip through terrain that would normally kill you. Because Samus Returns actually has a lot of clipping tricks. Mercury Steam kind of learned from their design, and terrain generally kills you if you end up inside of it. The easiest way to experience this casually is to do the first pseudo shots in Artaria to skip the broken Emmy. If you do 4, then you will unfortunately get crushed by the rocks and die. Another common option is if you do skip. If you do early cloak and you don't lower the water in Artaria before the Emmy zone. If you go to frozen Artaria, that area actually won't have any ice, but it will still have the collision detection. There are a lot of clipping options with skew, so you see Lab kind of crouching and trying to do that backward skew that he did to shoot through that wall. Doing another seam pseudo to hit that blob and get into this area kind of backwards. So by doing this backward skew and then running away from the wall and sliding, you actually kind of slide into the wall just a tiny bit. And then by doing dash melees, you kind of push yourself into the wall just a little bit. And by doing that, that allows you to put yourself in a position where the initial jump from Samus to Spark will actually just clear the 2 tiles. Because the spark bounce or spark jump actually goes about a tile and a half. So for any surfaces that are 2 tiles or 1 tile, you actually don't need to do any kind of map buffering. But with map buffering, you can get up to 7 tiles. Another unfortunate consequence of skew is that because when you have skew state, you don't turn around in the air, there's actually some situations that you can set up where you are unable to wall jump because you're technically facing the wrong direction, which is what Lab experienced in that room on the way to the water. Yeah, it can be very frustrating.
Oh yeah, Hobbit's put a lot more time in Unrestricted than I have, so he's definitely putting some new insight on the table, honestly.
Yeah, it's like a whole like reversion of your movement principles because you have to unlearn.
You have to be a lot more
respins.
careful. Losing skew is the most like devastating thing in the world, really. You have to go and get skew back anytime you like do a 180 in midair without being in like free aim or anything. So I like to kind of weave between ledges while in morph ball like this to try and make sure I don't accidentally lose skew.
Yeah, the other option is to do respin turnarounds instead of doing pivot respins around ledges. Morph ball fortunately does fall very fast, so that makes going through platforms pretty quick. But if you do respins, you can still do some of the platform weaving that you can normally only do with pivot respin, or that you normally do with pivot respins. Another unfortunate consequence of not having gravity suit is that water still is slow. I think you might have lost skew. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like it's just one minor interaction can just make you lose it by accident. It can be very, very frustrating.
Oh, this place works too. When I was practicing this, I did it somewhere else, but I can also do it here.
Yeah, this is a really, really good room to get it in. And all bosses, you actually can do it in this room with the storm door. And that allows you to basically, if you lose skew during the SQ fight, just get it back really quick before you do tricks that require it. However, because storm missiles are not required to beat the game with unrestricted tech, you just get skew back, and we will actually be going straight to wave beam. We'll be using another clip using a magnet. A magnet is generally a very favorable way to get an angle because it's typically very consistent and very simple to get angles that way. However, historically, we have not always had easy methods. Nice job getting skew back. We used to have to do what's called tornadoes, which is exactly what it sounds like. You stand in place and you spin a bunch. And that actually adds a small modulation to your next perfect skew. A perfect skew refers to a skew that's either Samus facing directly towards the screen or Samus facing away from the screen. Now, there's a modified version of tornadoes called mini tornadoes that Lab is doing here to clip this door, where you do crouch turnarounds, which allows you to slowly walk into this door and then dash melee in to get to a point where you can do a what's called a grapple clip. A grapple clip is essentially just making use of one of the very unique properties of grapple, where if you're inside of terrain while grapple is shooting, you actually disable the kill plane. This is quite advantageous for going through a lot of soft collision like doors. This is actually relevant in Escape as well if you choose to skip Ravenbeak. I do not believe Lab is doing that for this run because that's even more of a casino than Emmy Warp is at times. But you can essentially just go straight through that door into this room right after the cold room. And there was actually a route for a long time where you clicked into that cold room and needed to get like 9 energy tanks so that you didn't die. Truly a very cursed era of Unrestricted. You'll see another kind of interesting trick here is as long as Samus's ball is more than halfway out of the water, and a bomb hits her, then you will actually get full height from your bomb jump. This is an out of water bomb jump, and just a very convenient way to get out of this pool. And by doing that speed booster charge in place, you actually skip the only room where gravity suit is required beyond that cold room. And this allows you to skip straight to the wave beam Emmy, which is really convenient because Dread actually stacks beam upgrades. So you may have noticed that Lab went nowhere near Elon and releasing the X. So if you've seen some X enemies that are just kind of standing there, not doing anything with no hitbox, no hurtbox, that's why. If the X are not released, there's no animation for them to turn back into X parasites and become collectible items, essentially. So they will just sit there and be cosmetic, which is pretty cool, honestly. But yeah, so Lab Member can essentially shortcut straight to Wave Beam here, and getting Wave Beam is very, very nice for any percent, because it allows you to skip what is probably the hardest sequence of clips in the game. Notably the Powerbomb clip, the clip into the Powerbomb Emmy boss room. But fortunately, Lab is dialed in for this Wave Emmy kill and is going to be waving it goodbye very, very fast.
Yeah, so we're not going to be saying hello to our friend the blue Emmy. It's like, I think it's the only, besides the broken Emmy, I think it's the only one this run skipped.
Yep. And technically, like, within min bosses runs, or like min items runs, you can actually skip the Powerbomb Emmy, but it makes escape just, honestly, it becomes an art at that point. It is very, very difficult, and I don't know how Dioptus does it, because it is truly just wild.
Shoutouts to Dioptus.
Yeah, Dioptus and Momomo are just absolutely insanely talented min items runners that have basically brought the category to where it is today for min items unrestricted. But thankfully, because of clipping technology, we can actually just take this elevator back up to Hanubia and go straight to the Powerbomb Emmy, instead of taking that detour through Gavrin and going through the top entrance above Golzuna and needing to skip that fight, leading to needing to either do another set of mini tornadoes to skip the boss door and the room below, or clipping into the boss room so that the door never locks, and doing what is known as cross bomb skip to skip those collapsible blocks. We can just take a direct line straight to Hanubia, and then we'll be seeing Lab do that same clip that he did to get into Ferenia the first time, where you essentially just set up a position where you're halfway in the wall, have a speed booster charged, and do a buffered spark with 3 map lags. The first lag putting you right before the spark launches. It's essentially 2 frames before, like, I think it's 4 frames before, since map lag advances the game skips 3 frames.
The one
here.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, like, so the one big difference with this clip versus the one I did in Dyren to get to Ferenia, is I don't have any grapple ceilings to set my angle with, so I have to do that in a slightly different way. Did I lose skew? No, I didn't. Okay, I'm just doing it wrong. So I'm doing what's called the DLC setup. So essentially, I need to get. Oh, that's definitely lost skew. Okay. I essentially need to get 3 frame perfect angles in order to have the correct skew angle to clip through this clip into this wall.
Yeah, fortunately, there's this nice long hallway right here and that perfectly placed ledge.
Yeah, I can get skew
so
back.
Getting skew back is very fast. Ideally. But it's basically just about learning positions where you can get it back, so that way if something does happen, you can recover pretty quickly. Ideally, in run, there's kind of two schools of thought a little bit with skew. You either are a skew keeper, where you get it one time and then you just go, and you retool all of your movement to be skew friendly, or you use skew for what it's needed and have planned opportunities to get it back that are in your pathway. But it's kind of a a trade-off where for one you get easier movement, and for the other you have to basically readapt everything, but you don't have to get skew back again. You saw lab member do some map lags on that last jump there. Essentially, because map lag skips just the right amount of frames, it essentially allows you to do a double map buffer jump to get the correct frame to get the DLC clip. The alternative to doing this is called a neutral jump clip, which is a substantially harder setup, unfortunately.
Yeah, I remember when I originally learned this, I was no, I don't know. This is like a really subtle difference. The like astute viewer might notice, but I'm actually doing a slight the angle that you get depends on what animation you're using to turn around. I'm specifically starting this with a running turnaround, which gives you a different angle than if you just turned around while standing up.
Yeah, if you do a standing turnaround, it doesn't quite give you the angle you want. But if you do that running turnaround, you actually get kind of like a 60-degree angle on that first skew instead of a 30-degree angle, which will allow you to get this DLC clip angle that Lab explained. Unfortunately, even though it is technically a triple frame perfect trick, the first jump is the earliest frame during a running turnaround, or like the second frame during a running turnaround or something like that. And the second jump is the soonest jump that gives you a spin jump. If you do it too fast, then you get that that neutral jump that Lab was getting while attempting it. Very, very common failure mode for the trick. You basically just try again if that happens. But yeah, so you just kind of, if you lose skew, grab it again. Because another thing that can be very frustrating with skew is that sometimes when you grab wall or hit walls or ceilings, Samus will auto turn around because skew will force her to. This is especially dangerous on angled ceilings where it will put Samus at kind of a weird angle coming out of her Shine Spark, and that will force her to turn around in very uncomfortable ways. But if you hold free aim, you can prevent yourself from turning around. I think this angle is going to come out wide. You got a standing turnaround angle. Yeah, it's wide. So it's a very subtle difference in the final angle you get, because both of them look roughly the same, but unfortunately the wide angle is too wide, and the game still detects Samus's collision. So you will not, unfortunately, go through the wall. But if you do that running turnaround, you get that shallower angle that Lab showed before. But yeah, the main difference for kind of determining which one's which, Samus's cannon will actually be pointed more behind her during the running turnaround. Additionally, when you get that second angle, you won't be able to see Samus's visor at all with the direction she's facing. But yeah, so the difference between standing and running turnaround being extremely esoteric can be very frustrating, because if you get that aiming straight back behind you, towards the screen, you got it. But if Samus's cannon, ooh, very nice, very nice. If Samus's cannon is pointed more to the right, then unfortunately you have to try again.
Oh my god! Every
Let's
time,
go.
Very nice.
time I mess that up, I just get increasingly nervous, because it's I'm on a timer here, and I need to get it. But Feels so good when I finally get through that stupid wall.
Yeah, that's definitely a really tough wall clip. Even with neutral jump clipping, you have to do some kind of frustrating frame advancing. So, you know, you kind of get to pick your poison of how do you want to handle it. Now, with skew, you may notice the lab member is not shooting the Chozo at all. With skew, you can charge speed booster in the fight and just absolutely delete the first phase and pop his shield and get him transition straight over to this phase where he kind of X's out a little bit, which allows you to just shoot him with wave beam. And fortunately, because lab member is doing the storm skip / screw skip route, you have wave beam, so that second phase is really short. Wave beam is an eternal deleter.
So one interesting property they added to some boss rooms in this game is that they made it take you longer to store a speed boost. So you look at some of these rooms and like, okay, yeah, the typical. So there's actually a number. I think the typical length that you need to store a speed boost, I believe, is 17 tiles long. That number sounds familiar, but there are a couple of boss rooms where it actually takes longer than that. So that you can't just cheese the boss by storing a speed boost and doing a boatload of damage. Like the all bosses route does an early kill on the experiment Z57 boss by storing a skew right at the beginning. That's one of those rooms where it looks long enough where you think you can store a speed boost, but it's actually given one of those funny properties where...
Yeah, there's also even like a unique skew in that room that is different from the like skew state or other possible skews that have been found. So it's a really interesting fight in all bosses. But fortunately, for any percent, we don't need to go to Frozen Artaria at all. So we don't even go near it since you don't even get screw attack. So you will actually get to see the very rare Metroid suit regular spin jump for this run, which is kind of a treat. Normally you have screw attack, or in some cases you actually do escape in the normal suit instead of the Metroid suit, which is a whole nother can of worms and part of the kind of the traditional or like top level route for Unrestricted. But one unfortunate feature of this route is that because we did not get storm missiles, that means the only way to skip Ravenbeak's gold phase is to do a modified version of 9+1, or to mash at least I believe is 15 hertz on his melee counter in the first phase. So lab member will either we'll have to do one or the other. The modified version of 9+1 is essentially just damaging Ravenbeak's shield until he's just before red, taking a melee counter manually, mashing through it, and then shooting him a little bit to get the forced red wave counter, and then finishing off his first phase. Ravenbeak also, unfortunately, has a very large beam modifier penalty for wave beam. So he gets absolutely chunked by missiles, but for wave beam, it's just another day in the office for him.
Yeah, I was gonna add like, what was I gonna add? Oh yeah, I don't think I really got to showcase it with the gold Chozo, but late game bosses, I think like Hobbit mentioned earlier, hit really hard. Like I think with 2 tanks, the gold Chozo can actually, either 2 tanks or 1 tank, the gold Chozo can actually just one-shot you, which is why I get 3 tanks specifically, as on the off chance.
It does an absurd amount of damage. It's wild.
Yeah. So we're gonna use this magenta. I'm gonna shoot him until his force field here turns magenta, and we're just gonna wait for him to take a swing here like that. So that first swing is you're pretty much, I think it's basically random. You're waiting for him to do it, but once you turn his shield red, you get the scripted one where he chucks his force field at you like this, and you get this kind of more cinematic parry cutscene here. Oh, I flashed the wrong one.
That's okay. Another fun fact about the Ravenbeak fight is if you flash shift in between the phases during the cutscene, you can actually shoot him during it. which with ice missiles you use to get your little cheat shots in. With beam, you just kind of take whatever damage you can get, because he does take full damage during that cutscene. So it is honestly it looks really weird, but like it is optimal to do it. It's not just like a haha hee hee for fun. Another very like important part of this fight is that down stomp is actually very, very slow. So what you can do is actually go against this left wall, and if you're close enough to the wall, he cannot do that attack. And that means that he's more likely to select the Gatling attack, which, as labmemb3r has demonstrated, you can pretty much just dash melee below it, and just continue to DPS him. So I think it's another fun speedrunning trick for people at home to try out. Ooh, getting a counter first off, very, very nice.
I was gonna say, the RNG gods have finally smiled upon me and have offered me the opening from phase 3 with a counter. Like,
they've extended the olive branch, and
like, we know we gave you a bad Emmy award,
but here's this, have that. It's fun.
Since I am stuck with a beam, I don't really know what the optimal setup is in terms of allowing a counter, but again, like any opportunity you can have to just kind of sink some damage into him without having to risk taking any damage is usually pretty good, especially if you're playing on a harder difficulty.
Yeah, the main way to know if it was faster to do the counter or not is if he goes to his final death cutscene with the melees, then it was likely not faster, because the counter cutscene will not end early to do this cutscene. However, if there is still plenty of fight left, then it is faster, because you gain a very large amount of damage by doing that melee counter, which is very interesting, because typically the cutscene counters actually hurt your DPS.
So we've got the final boss, truly. RBX and Kraid, who we haven't seen the whole run, have combined into this unholy amalgamation known only as RBX, and we get to use our brand new Metroid Hyper Beam to just banish it to the Shadow Realm from whence it came.
But this leaves a very important philosophical question. What flavor do you think it is? Because, you look at the suit, it's red and green. It could be watermelon flavor. It could be black cherry. That's one of my favorite answers. I've seen all sorts of answers, so, feel free to weigh in. What flavor do you think the Hyper Beam is? I'm personally in the camp of black cherry, but there's a lot of good answers.
Black cherry is a good answer. Let us know with your donations. Hey, send a donation into noglitchesallowed.org/donate. Let us know.
Because I've seen a whole lot of runs, and every so often someone gives a new answer I've never heard of before, and having run the game since just after it came out, I'm always open to some new creative answers. And as I mentioned before, we don't have screw attack, so you actually get to see the Metroid suit's spin jump, which, it's nothing too wild, but normally you just never see it. Fortunately, the Hyper Beam does break every single block in the game, including collapsible blocks, so the screw attack blocks are nothing more than a minor inconvenience.
Alright, time's coming up in... Oh, never mind, hold on. And time. Alright, here we go.
GG.
Alrighty.
GG's labmemb3r.
I'm gonna keep it brief, because I think Emmy work might have eaten up a bit of my time, but thank you everybody for tuning in. I hope I did the game justice. Thanks Hobbit for commentating for me, providing your insights, is doing a little more Unrestricted than I have. And thank you to the Metroid Dread community specifically. I've jumped around a handful of different speed games, so like I genuinely mean this when I say like I feel very at home in the Metroid Dread community. I feel like I'm always free to ask really dumb questions to improve my ability to play the game, and I don't think I would have the leaderboard numbers that I do now if they hadn't helped me out. So thank you so much, and I hope to continue working with you all in the future. Oh, and thanks to the No Glitches team for letting me do another run for y'all. I'm always happy to show off my runs, and this is the last No Holidays Allowed that to my knowledge. So happy to be part of a momentous occasion almost. It's even if it's a bittersweet one. That's all I have, I think. I've been doing a lot of Mario 64, a little bit different from this game, but when I return to this game, I'll be doing 100%, which is a whole lot different. But you can find that all on twitch.tv/labmember. That's all I got. Do you have anything for the folks at home, Hobbit?
Just great run from you, Lab. I know Unrestricted can be a very uphill battle with some of the RNG factors, but I think you did a whole lot of justice and overall had a very great run. If anyone is interested in speedrunning this game, please join the Metroid Dread speedrunning Discord. You can find it on SRC, and we are always open to new players and helping people out. So
we'd love to have more unrestricted runners.
Absolutely. If you want to run Unrestricted, please join. I will teach you everything. And on that note, that's all I got. We'll see everyone next mission.
See you next mission.
Awesome.
Everybody.
Thank you both so much for being on. That was so cool. Also, huge shout-outs to the Metroid Dread speedrunning community. They're awesome. Yeah, just stick around, folks. We're going to break.